when I built a full-sized basketball court in my backyard. I figured the hardest part would be finishing it on time or fixing my terrible free throw percentage, not dealing with an overzealous HOA enforcer slapping a padlock on my gate and declaring it a community asset. But that's exactly what happened. It started on a Saturday morning so perfect it could have been a screensaver: blue skies, light breeze, coffee steaming in my hand as I stared proudly at the court I'd spent months designing and building. We're talking full regulation layout, a glass backboard, painted lines, motion-activated scoreboard synced with a Bluetooth speaker. This wasn't a makeshift hoop on a garage setup. This was the real deal. A dream court. My court. Built legally on my own land, permits signed, city approved, blood, sweat, and a few sore hamstrings to prove it. By that afternoon, neighborhood kids began to trickle in, wide-eyed, sneakers squeaking on fresh concrete. I told them the rules were simple: keep it clean, no foul language, and everyone gets a turn. They nodded, grateful. It wasn't just a court, it became a place for them to hang out, be kids, and play without judgment. And for a short time, everything was good. But of course, in any neighborhood governed by a homeowners association, good things can't last long. Enter Linda. Everyone knew Linda. She'd been HOA president of Eastwood Greens for 6 years running, though nobody could remember ever voting for her. Her mailbox had a custom Neighborhood Harmony Coordinator plaque, and she carried a binder of infractions like it was a sacred text. She once cited someone for planting non-uniform daffodils. So I wasn't shocked when I saw her standing stiff as a flagpole at the edge of my backyard, arms folded, sunglasses on, lips pursed so tightly they could have sliced paper. She didn't knock. She didn't wave. She just walked right through my side gate like she owned the land and immediately started barking at the kids to leave the public amenity space. I stepped out, sweaty from playing, and asked what in the world she was talking about. This, she said, gesturing with disdain, is a shared recreational area now. It exceeds 400 square feet and is visible from the common sidewalk. Per HOA Article 3, Section 9, it qualifies as community property unless specifically approved otherwise. I blinked. You do realize that clause was nullified after the HOA merger 3 years ago, right? Her smile didn't flinch. Well, we'll see what the board says. That night, I came home to find a zip-tied sign on my gate: HOA Public Recreation Area. Members only by schedule. A cheap brass padlock dangled beneath it and a laminated clipboard hung off the fence with printed court usage request forms. I stared at it. Then I laughed. I laughed so hard I had to lean on the fence to stay upright. It was the kind of absurdity that felt like satire. Linda had gone full HOA warlord. She'd marched into my yard, claimed it like a power-suited raccoon, and dared me to stop her. Thing is, I wasn't the kind of guy who fought back with fists. I fought with facts and paperwork. The next day, I received an email titled Violation Notice, Unauthorized Recreational Structure. It warned of daily fines and included blurry, bush-snapped photos of my court. But in the CC line of that email was a name I hadn't seen in years: Carl Brenner, the outgoing licensing officer for the HO, and more importantly, my old college buddy. I called him. The moment I said, "You won't believe what Linda just pulled," he groaned. She's doing it again? Last year she tried to declare a resident's koi pond a community reflection space. Turns out the HOA had been trying to replace him, but no one wanted the job, largely because of Linda. "I can fast-track your appointment," Carl said. "You've got the background. You're organized. And frankly, you're the only person brave or petty enough to deal with her." 2 days later, I was sworn in as the interim licensing officer of Eastwood Greens. That title gave me access to every HOA document, zoning map, board vote transcript, and most importantly, the authority to interpret and enforce the HOA charter. The licensing officer, by definition, determines what qualifies as communal property. I poured myself a drink, sat down with the HOA rulebook, and started flipping. Within an hour, I'd already found 4 violations Linda had committed just by padlocking my court. The clause she quoted? Obsolete. The merger that happened 3 years ago nullified it. Not only was her seizure of my court unauthorized, it was flat-out illegal. I created a packet color-coded, highlighted, annotated, and taped a cease and desist letter right to her unauthorized sign the next morning. The kids were back on the court by noon. Music blaring. Laughter bouncing across the cul-de-sac. Linda watched from her porch, face pale, jaw clenched. She had no idea the game she started had just gone professional. By the following morning, my inbox had 3 emails, one from Linda, one from the general HOA account, and one from something called HOA Legal Enforcement Division, which, after a quick check, turned out to be Linda using a Gmail alias. Her legal threats were word salad claims of abuse of authority, threats of escalation to district review, and accusations that I was undermining neighborhood harmony. I nearly spit out my coffee. Because here's the thing, Linda didn't realize I wasn't playing defense anymore. I had full access. And what I uncovered, that changed everything. First, the HOA charter hadn't been updated since the subdivision merger, making half of Linda's policies toothless. Second, the HOA hadn't submitted required county compliance paperwork in 2 years, meaning any enforcement from that period could be challenged or nullified. And third, I found emails between Linda and the vice president, Joel, outlining plans to reclaim various backyards by reclassifying them as shared green zones, including mine. My court had already been mapped out as recreational integration zone 4 months before I even poured the foundation. Linda didn't want to shut me down. She wanted to take credit for it. I knew then I had to go big. First, I filed a formal ethics review request with the county's HOA Oversight Committee. Then, I reached out to every parent whose kids played on the court. I told them what was happening and asked them to write statements. Every single one signed, dated, notarized. Next, I announced a Community Transparency Day. I posted it on the bulletin board, sent it to the local paper, and shared it in the HOA newsletter. Linda went ballistic. She blasted an email calling my event unauthorized, unethical, and destabilizing. She then called the police. I kid you not, she accused me of corrupting minors with unregulated athletic gatherings. Detective Barnes showed up. He took one look at the court, chuckled, and asked if he could shoot a few hoops while we talked. I handed him my paperwork. "Looks like you're all squared away," he said, nailing a 3-pointer. "Linda's got no jurisdiction here." She watched from across the street, livid. But I wasn't finished. The next morning, dozens of flyers were taped to my fence, mailbox, even my car. Zone 4 temporarily seized for HOA summer programming. Comic Sans. No official stamp. No vote. Just Linda. Greg, the HOA vice president, rolled up in his golf cart not long after. He tried to look official. "Hey, Nick," he said. "Just doing a little morning distribution." "Greg," I said, holding up the flyer, "who authorized the seizure?" "Well, Linda said the board voted last night." "Interesting. Because per the bylaws, zoning changes require 48-hour notice and licensing officer review. I got neither. So this vote, if it happened, is null." He started pulling flyers down. I filed a formal ethics complaint that afternoon, complete with photos, signed statements, audio from a secret meeting I legally recorded, and a full timeline of Linda's power grab. The next week, a county inspector named Harold showed up. He was perfecto nonsense, clipboard in hand, and visibly tired of HOA drama. He walked the neighborhood, snapped photos of unauthorized signs, jotted notes on Linda's rickety clubhouse renovations, and when he saw my court, permitted, legal, maintained, she's toast. His final report included 9 violations by Linda alone, unauthorized zoning changes, safety violations, and procedural abuse. One of the more egregious ones? Approving a fence extension for her friend that blocked a drainage easement. That night, at the emergency board meeting, I showed up with a projector and a binder titled Operational Failures Under Current HOA Leadership. The room was packed. 50 residents, most holding their own copies of my violation summary. Linda tried to speak, but every time she opened her mouth, the crowd cut her off. She tried to cast herself as the victim, as someone making hard choices for the greater good. It fell flat. The vote was unanimous. Linda removed. Joel resigned on the spot. We rewrote the bylaws. Limited power consolidation. Protected private property. Required full transparency for all board meetings. And my court? It stayed. We added lights, a camera, and hosted a massive barbecue to celebrate. Harold even came, wearing a shirt someone had made that read, "HOA Inspector, not your enemy." As the sun set, I saw a pale face watching from a second-floor window in the only house on the block with a "for sale" sign out front. Linda hadn't moved yet, but it didn't matter. Her reign was over. And my court? It wasn't just a court anymore. It was the heart of a neighborhood that had finally remembered how to breathe.